Hi, this is Richard Blade, and you're listening to the Blue Zone Podcast Network as it presents Permanent Record, an in-depth look at the classic albums of the 70s and 80s, albums which have earned a permanent place of honor, both in our hearts and in our record collections.
All right, everyone, welcome back. Hey, this is your second favorite host, Brian, and I'm excited to welcome you to the second installment of our exciting September promotion, September Sans Serra. It's one of the most exciting things that we've been doing on this podcast. And, last episode, it was just me by myself. But this time I invited a guest to sit in with me. And of course, he's a man that you've heard before, and he's a man who you heard two stories about if you listened to that last episode on the mission. It's my friend and yours, Mr. Colby Zell. Colby, how you doing?
I'm doing great. As a matter of fact, I really appreciated the fact that you introduced yourself as the second favorite host of this particular podcast, because obviously number one would be me.
Obviously, yep. Most of the time when I say that, I do mean that Sarah is the favorite, but of course she's not here.
Oh.
So you would basically just jump over top of me.
Right.
And go right to number one.
Number one with a bullet.
I stall out at number two. So anyway, Colby, I'm really excited that you're here because, with Sarah away, we can talk about some real manly music.
So manly.
A lot of times on here, we talk about music with like wimpy synthesizers and silly sounding drum machines. You can only take so much of that, am I right?
I can't even take very much of it at all.
Oh, I know. It's just not as cool as this hard rock music that we're going to talk about today, Colby.
I'm talking about driving drums, rhythmic bass, flinging hair, maybe even vests with no shirts underneath.
That is manly indeed, and I'm not sure you and I are qualified to talk about a band with as much hair as this band.
Once upon a time we were.
Well, yeah, but that time is come and gone.
Very much gone.
So yeah,
much like our hairlines.
Yeah, exactly. So we are here today. We're going to talk about an album that we got into back in 1989, and it's an album by the group called The Cult, and this is Sonic Temple, my favorite of all the Cult's albums.
It's definitely tied with my favorite. For some reason, Sonic Temple and Electric, to me, I know that they did a lot better production on Sonic Temple, and they had a lot more concentration on, quote, making a serious album when they hit Sonic Temple. But there's pieces of Electric that I will always hold very, very dear, and so I treasure them sort of equally.
Okay. Well, Electric is really good. That's my second favorite Cult album. Rick Rubin produced that one, I think, right?
Yep.
It's crazy. I have this in my notes. We'll just skip to it right now because it just came to my mind. The Cult, do you agree with me me that the Cult over the years went through like numerous stages of development. Like they were actually like, before this record, they were like 3 different kind of bands, like 3 sounds.
Normally you see like a gradual evolution of a band, particularly one that's got its key members. If the key members stay constant, generally speaking, the music has an evolution that's easily trackable as opposed to jumping dramatically from album to album.
Yeah.
And the Cult definitely did some jumping. I mean, their 84 album Dreamtime sounds extremely different from Love, which sounds extremely different from Electric.
Yep.
And then I think Electric to Sonic Temple, there is some natural evolution there. But yeah, those 3 sections there, Dreamtime to Electric Dreamtime to Love to Electric, that's definitely 3 different bands.
I know, it's crazy. And then after this point, they're going to carry on in this vein, I think, sort of for a little while. I think their next album, Ceremony, they kind of try to make it sound like Sonic Temple.
Right.
Just they're not as successful. But after that, they just go through some phases where sometimes I don't even recognize like the style of music. The album after Ceremony was a self-titled album that had like a picture of a ram on the front or something. And there's 2 songs on there that I really like, Coming Down and Star. But like some of those other songs, they're just so strange. And like it sounds like Billy is just like playing these like super crunchy, fast chords and not even putting guitar leads in there. And it sounds like a completely different guitarist to me on that record.
Right.
And they'll come back to, every now and again they throw a single out that sort of sounds like the Cult, but their more recent stuff is kind of strange too.
Right.
I have every album, I think, since then. I keep trying to like find a Cult album that I love as much as Sonic Temple, and it hasn't happened yet.
To me, the reason why you and I had so much of a sort of bond over this album is that a lot of things in our lives were changing, just like everybody's does. We were roommates in college together, freshman year.
Yep.
We were experiencing a whole lot of different people, a whole lot of different environments, and here was a different sort of sound for both of us, really. I mean, I had gotten a little bit into more harder edge stuff right before then, but there was this common bond on this one particular album that there's a certain magic to it, and I don't think that even if the Cult came up with something that was new and distinct and still of equal quality to Sonic Temple, I don't think it would ever have the same pull for either one of us for those reasons.
Yep, you're probably right. We're a little too old and a little too jaded.
Yep.
At this point. I do want to talk about like that time period that you just mentioned where you kind of went away from what I was into and you got into some of that harder stuff. Let's table that though and just give some background information on the record.
Sure.
And then come back to it because I do want to talk to you about that time period.
Definitely.
So going by what you just told us, the different albums, seems to me like this is the band's 4th record. I know they existed as a band called like the Southern Death Cult before that, but I didn't really count that. Okay, so this is the Cult's 4th album, and it was released back in April of 1989. And something I didn't realize was actually how popular this album was. For some reason, I just sort of assumed that was kind of a mediocre chart showing. But this album peaked at number 10 in the U.S. on the Billboard 200, and it went all the way to number 3 in the U.K.
Oh, but they had at least one track that was number 1 with a bullet in New Zealand.
Yes, I did make a note of that for later on in the show. Yeah, New Zealand, love that song. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we'll get to it. So I saw something neat. Billboard magazine just did an article about the 30th anniversary of this album because it's actually really being celebrated this month. They just released like a few box sets expanding on the album. And evidently the one that I ordered, it was like a 5 CD set. That seems to have gotten pushed back to October. But everything else seems to have come out, the vinyl and some of the other ones. I don't really understand it. It's on Spotify, but I got an email from Amazon saying mine was pushed back to October. But anyway, Billboard celebrating 30th anniversary, they estimated that Sonic Temple has sold over 1.5 million copies in the United States because they said that it was certified platinum in January of 1990, which is 1 million sales. And then according to the Nielsen people, it has sold 429,000 additional copies since 91. So that's roughly 1.5 million. And believe it or not, the songs on this album have generated 17 million streams on YouTube or Spotify, whatever. That's
good.
That's pretty respectable. You know, one of the things that really shocked me when I first saw this album, I remember you had the cassette. It really shocked me that the guitarist was front and center on the album cover.
Yeah.
I think it wasn't until I got the CD years later that I even realized Ian Astbury was on the cover in the background there on the cassette. It was so small. Right. It just sort of looks like Billy doing the windmill.
Right. And as a matter of fact, I, for the longest time, thought that was the only person that was on there.
Yeah. And it was just so weird because, like I always say, you know, I really was anti-guitar at that point because all my music was synthesizer stuff. And I'm like, man, if I was the singer of this band, I would be mad because the singer is more important than a guitarist. I mean, God. But, you know, New Order put their drummer on the cover of one of their albums.
Sometime this past week, knowing that we were doing this, I read an article with Billy, and he said that they were in an era where, you know, hair metal was pretty much at its height, and he was personally in love with let me back up a second. He was talking about how punk had been one of the big inspirations for him and Ian when they got started.
Okay.
But punk was sort of an answer. It was basically the swing of the pendulum away from the progressive stuff, where people wanted short, abrupt, charged stuff to sort of get an idea out without going into the 15-minute sessions that progressive rock can become.
It's like a reaction to like Yes and ELP and those kind of bands.
But he felt there was also like a sweet spot of rock before progressive stuff had taken over that he sort of missed. And he felt that there was this sort of return to the love of the guitar in that particular era. And they were just about to produce this album. And the producer that they ended up going with, whose name...
Bob Rock.
Yeah. He had big discussions about guitar tone and love of some of the real virtuosos of the guitar from the 70s that he connected with Bob on a particular level on, and he really wanted to harness that, making the guitar the star.
Okay.
And it's kind of that essence is captured in that album cover, because that's what they're like. All of them felt like this had to be driven by the guitar. And I think they very well succeeded.
They did. And that record cover does get that point across. It's almost like a Pete Townsend kind of windmill thing is what makes you think of.
Yep.
So that's kind of cool. You know, you brought up the producer Bob Rock. He's someone who has produced like a lot of this hard rock kind of genre music over the years. And I sort of thought I knew who Bob Rock was just because I know, you know, Metallica and Motley Crue, David Lee Roth. But I recently found out he was on our friend John Lamoureux's podcast a few months ago. And he was actually a founding member of a band called the Payolas, who I only learned about recently when I started listening to satellite radio. But they were at like an early 80s new wave kind of band from Canada, I think. And they had a song called Eyes of the Stranger that they play now on First Wave a lot. But at the time, they couldn't get any airplay because radio didn't want to touch a band called the Payolas.
Right.
and on the podcast, they talk about how like an executive says to him, you will never become big unless you change the name. And they didn't want to do it, so they didn't. So that took me by surprise since I thought I knew him. I also was surprised by the fact that Bob Rock has produced like 3 albums for Michael Bublé.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's crazy.
There's a shift.
Yeah. So he's still around. He's still working. He's mixing and he's producing. He has a band that he's in as well. You know, he's someone who has played an important role in a lot of bands like we said, Motley Crue, David Lee Roth, Bryan Adams, Skid Row, and Metallica. Colby, he is the man who a lot of people think ruined Metallica with Enter Sandman and the Black Album.
Black Album, right.
And he also recorded one of my least favorite albums of any band, Colby, Metallica's Load.
Why is that your least favorite album?
I'm just not a fan of that one.
Oh, okay. Just checking.
Don't like it. All right, so we were talking about how the band, The Cult, kind of went through some different phases as they were developing. And I know you know that Electric was actually recorded basically twice.
Right.
They produced it, or they recorded it once with the producer from Love.
Yep.
And were unhappy. So then they went and recorded it with Rick Rubin, like you were talking about.
That same interview with Billy Duffy, he was talking about how they loved Love. They loved what they had done, and they loved the producer, and it was very comfortable. And they had these songs written for Electric, and they got with that same producer, and it did not sound right to them.
Just didn't work?
At all. And they were like, no. And that's enter Rick Rubin, and that's why Electric was definitely a definitive change in their sound. I think that if they would have gone with the Love producer, the sound wouldn't have been anywhere near the feel that it ended up being on that Electric album.
Oh, yeah, without a doubt. That record actually, I don't know, I always say a few years ago, but it's probably like 10 years ago. It actually did get released as like part of a 2-disc set called Electric and Peace.
Oh.
And the Peace disc is like the Electric album as produced by that other guy.
Oh, wow.
So it's kind of interesting to hear. Not all the songs are the same, but the ones that do match up that are on both albums are very different.
Oh, I can imagine.
It's kind of cool. That kind of interested me because they went through that period where they were, I don't know if they were unsure of themselves. They just didn't like the sound. They didn't know what they were going for, so they re-recorded that album again. Here with this album, I'm sure you read, they actually like recorded the demos, like they demoed the album 2 separate times, the whole way through. 14 songs on the first demo collection and 15 songs on the second demo collection. It seemed like once again, they weren't exactly sure what they were going for. The first time they recorded it with Eric Singer, who was a drummer that would go on to be in Kiss. And then the second time they recorded it with Chris Taylor, a drummer who was in Bob Rock's band. And then ultimately, they recorded it with Mickey Curry. He's the one in the studio. And he was Bryan Adams' drummer at the time. They kind of borrowed him.
I think I wouldn't term it necessarily that they didn't know what they wanted. I think it was more that they didn't know what they didn't know. By that, I mean, they knew their music, but they didn't necessarily know exactly how to bring the best out in their music. And they didn't know exactly what chord they wanted to strike. They had a feel for it, but they didn't know exactly how to get there. And so they were trying to put their faith in someone who could properly guide them. And that's why they did all of that effort. They wanted to make sure that this album was exactly the album they wanted. And I think that they got that out of the Bob Rock produced Sonic Temple.
Yeah, I don't think anyone would dispute that. This is a pretty fantastic record.
Oh, yeah.
You know, we were talking about those earlier discs. Do you also get a sense on this album that, I know you said you read that interview with Billy Duffy, maybe he talks about it. Billy Duffy just sort of, not that I followed them at the time, obviously, but looking back and listening to those albums, Billy Duffy seems to become like a guitar god immediately upon the release of this album. Like, I don't get a sense that he was like an amazing, massive guitar talent before this. It seemed like he played a lot of power chords and stuff, but all of a sudden he's soloing like all over the place on this record.
So, yeah, I think that it's sort of an organic thing. Like, obviously in the very beginning, what he was expected to do for the band wasn't anywhere near what he was expected for Sonic Temple. Mm-hmm. If you compare what they were doing in Dreamtime, like, you didn't need a guitarist to be a rock god.
Right.
He started experimenting with a lot of different sounds in Love. I mean, the stuff that we've talked about before with She Sells Sanctuary was totally a random experiment and throwing all the effects and seeing what stuck. And
oh, that's right. We talked about that one on our mixtape. I forgot about that.
So to me, where he got between Love, some of it is we were talking about how, you know, there's definite distinctive bands, but it's also like every step in his evolution as a guitarist. You know, like Dreamtime, you don't necessarily think of the guitar being a major proponent of those songs. Right. It's just there.
Yep.
And then Love, it's definitely more pronounced. Electric, it's seriously more pronounced. And by the time it hits Sonic Temple, he has become a virtuoso, you know, and like
he has.
It's not only the fact that they wanted to have a guitar-driven record, but he was also someone that had grown musically to being able to carry that weight. I think it's kind of cool when you listen to those things in that order. You can hear him becoming better every time.
Yeah, definitely. That's funny that you mentioned that, like the idea of growing into this guitar virtuoso made me think of something that I read. I think it was in thequietest.com. They mentioned how when the Cult was touring on Electric, this is just sort of a neat fact, Guns N' Roses was opening for the Cult. Did you see that?
No.
They talk about how, like, by the time the tour ended, Guns N' Roses was outselling the Cult by a massive amount, as you can imagine.
Right.
The article in The Quietest questions, like, you know, the Cult had already changed with those last three albums, but did that tour and having to deal with the fact that their opening band was so much huger than them. In America, is huger a word? More huge. You know, is that part of the thing that drove them to go into the studio and record this massive American sounding hard rock album, because they wanted something that they could go out, get played on the radio, and, you know, sell out arenas like they ultimately would go on to do.
It would be hard to say that they could be faulted for being influenced by a guitarist like Slash.
Yeah, right.
I mean, in terms of modern musicians, he's got to be one of the top 10. When you talk about particularly the guitar, I mean, that guy, I've seen him live twice now. Amazing. He's worth all the hype that he's ever gotten. And so if you were on tour with a young Slash and watching this guy create and generate the kind of hype that he does on stage just by moving his fingers and try to capture a piece of that in your next album, I wouldn't blame them one bit. Thankfully, they were more influenced by Slash than Axl.
Oh, yeah, really? Thankfully, Buckethead wasn't on that tour. We could have ended up with the Cult wearing buckets on their head. All right, so let's talk about our personal history with this record a little bit, Colby. More or less, my personal history is you bought the cassette and then I listened to it, although there is a story that I do want to talk about. So my question to you is, like we alluded to earlier, up till this point, we sort of were listening to a lot of the same bands, Depeche Mode, Ultravox, Howard Jones. I know you had Cross That Line by Howard Jones. You were a fan of that album. So what was it that made you take this little turn where you went off on a tangent and started getting into that harder music?
So I remember very distinctly having a discussion with some classmates I think it was in biology class. Everybody was going, and I mean, almost everybody from my class that could get tickets was going to see Bon Jovi in a concert in Hershey.
Another Bob Rock album, Slippery When Wet.
How about that?
Yep.
Some of my classmates said, "Hey, you're going to the show, right? You're going to the Bon Jovi show," and I was like, "No." And they were like, "What? Why wouldn't you didn't want to go?" And I'm like, "No, I'm not a big fan of Bon Jovi." And they were like, But why? I said, I don't really like the guitar. It's not my thing. And at the time, that was 100% true. But I remember distinctly having that conversation because everybody looked at me like I grew another head. And that was probably the last time that I could say that and be honest, because shortly after that, through a couple of different associations, I worked at a fast food place where almost all the other guys that worked there with me were metalheads. So I was getting exposed to a lot of metal there. And then our other friend, Jason Beal, who's also been a guest host on this podcast, when he was in his freshman year at college, he had a roommate that introduced him to bands like Queensryche and King's X. And he passed those along to me. I went out and bought the albums, and then it just became like a switch was flicked, and I started getting into the harder stuff. And then I joined a band. This little local act was looking for a lead singer, and they happened to know my sister, and my sister said, "My brother can sing," which was true at the time. And
it's not true anymore?
I don't think so. I was going to be fronting for this band called the House Sticks, and then I took this summer job at a warehouse, and I ended up working elbow to elbow with another local musician who was a lead guitarist for a band called the Insiders, and we would talk about music all the time, even though it was a local pop station that would get played in the warehouse all the time. I'm totally going on a tangent, but I think it's a funny point.
Okay.
Him and I were both very into hard rock, and I can distinctly remember Milli Vanilli's big song.
Blame It on the Rain?
No. Girl, You Know It's True.
Oh, okay. All right.
That was a big song that summer, and every time it would come on, we'd be like, God, I can't believe these guys are popular. And by the end of the summer, when that song would come up, we were doing like the little running in place thing like they did in the video. Like, we had made fun of it so much that we'd become fans by total accident. But he had introduced me. His band covered the Pixies. They covered a lot of music that I hadn't gotten interested in, but he passed this stuff along to me. One time when we were going out for lunch, he played me the Cult Electric, and he talked to me about Sonic Temple, and he said it was even better. And so I ran out and I bought them, and I played the living hell out of both of them. But that was really the thing that keyed it. And at the same time, that summer I had gotten a vehicle, and it's tied in because I had a cassette player in this vehicle.
Yep.
And this vehicle was specifically made famous in our dorm because when I was driving one of our dorm mates, I guess we'd call him.
One of our friends
that lived in the dorm on our wing. The antifreeze line blew, and it looked like the thing had caught on fire. And it was a sort of a reddish-orange Pontiac Sunbird, and so everybody called it the Inferno after
right.
that.
I have it right here in my notes. I find it difficult to listen to this album without remembering the Inferno. Because it was always in your cassette player.
Always. When we were in college, I was also in a production at another college that I'd have to drive about a half an hour to get to.
Would that be Jesus Christ Superstar?
It was a production of Jesus Christ Superstar.
That was mentioned in our last episode. I don't know if you know that.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's amazing. But on the drives to and from that other school, I would be listening to nothing but Sonic Temple and driving really, really uncomfortably fast.
Well, you had to get there quickly before your car caught on fire. I remember a time or two in the dorm where we would mention the Inferno, and people would say, "Oh, do you call Colby's car the Inferno because it's that fiery red color?" And we'd be like, "No, we call it the Inferno because it catches on fire." Didn't you have to, like, one time at like a street light in Hershey, didn't you have to get out, like, put a fire out with your jacket? Like, actually, you ruined your jacket?
I did ruin my jacket, but you're conflating two stories.
Oh, okay. The
Inferno broke down at a street light in Hershey.
Okay.
The time that you're talking about, it was just, I was driving on an interstate, and that's when the flame came out the back, or I saw all the smoke from the antifreeze coming out the back, and I pulled over, and I didn't know anything about cars. I still really don't know that much about cars, but I popped my hood, and I just saw what looked like flame on the engine. So first thing I could think about was taking my jacket off and smacking the out of it with my jacket to try to get the flames to go down, but my jacket ended up melting as a result. Members only, baby.
That's what I thought it was. I didn't want to risk saying it being wrong, but I thought it was a members only jacket. I hate to hear about a members only jacket going down in the line of duty. Do you remember an incident with this album? Once again, in our dorm, where this album caused us to get a visit from the Dean of Housing?
I do distinctly remember that particular incident.
Yeah, it was some afternoon, and we were just kind of hanging out. We weren't in class, and we were hanging out in a room, and we turned this album on, because I took my stereo to college, and I had like relatively big speakers. They're not huge speakers, but they're pretty big for a dorm room.
Definitely way too big for a dorm room.
I don't think I have ever had that stereo turned up as loudly as we had it that day. And it was insane. It was insanely loud. I don't know why we even thought that was okay.
See, it's an amazing thing that happens. There's a certain complete and utter disregard for other human life when you're a teenager, I think. And at the time, we had every bit of that.
Yeah.
And we thought it would be hilarious fun to turn up this great song and let everybody enjoy it, regardless of whether they wanted to or not.
It was so loud. And all of a sudden, this big chubby guy who we've never seen before is like in the doorway to our room yelling at us.
I can remember him well. He had blonde hair parted to the side. His face was like a tomato red.
I'm not sure we could even hear what he was saying.
We couldn't, because we were going, what?
Oh, that's right.
And he was screaming,
just like smiling.
Turn it down.
And he claims, I remember he said he could hear our music on the other side of the union building, the student union building, which was the length of our building, a parking lot, that building, and then the other side of that building. So that was a long, long way away.
Yeah. I think that you could have possibly heard a few notes of Billy Duffy's guitar on the other side of the union building.
Now, I have to give credit to him. I mean, if I was the Dean of Housing, I would have confiscated that stereo. He said to us, if this happens again, I will confiscate your stereo.
Right.
So he was nicer than I would have been if I was his age and grumpy and overweight. So kudos to you, Dean Cesare, for not taking away my stereo. And that stereo never again was turned up that loud.
Nope.
We behaved ourselves.
For the most part.
All right, Colby, I meant to say at the start of the show, our course of action for this episode, this is a one episode look at Sonic Temple. We gave you some history about the band. We gave you our personal history with the album. I'm about to hit you up with a couple reviews just to get us in the mood. And then we each picked 2 songs from the record that we especially like. And we're going to talk about those 4 songs. So this isn't like a 2-part. We're not going to talk about every song on the album. Just enough to give you a taste. And hopefully if you have not heard this album before, because I imagine a lot of people that listen to our podcast and enjoy it are more of the synth crowd, like I really am. But this is a good record. I think if you give it a chance, you might like some of what you hear. So anyway, I have 3 reviews, Colby. Would you rather start with a review from People magazine back in 1989, from the month the album came out, or would you rather hear a quote from Billy Duffy kind of commenting on the album, looking back on it?
Let's start with the man.
All right. So Billy Duffy, in a much more contemporary article, said, "You got to remember the context in which that album was recorded in 1988. The hair metal thing was raging in Los Angeles. Guns N' Roses was finally blowing up with Appetite for Destruction. Big rock was happening, and Bob Rock was at the center of that. So it was an album of its time, for sure. I mean, it was 1988. Everybody was wearing a headband. But listen, a good song is a good song, no matter what decade it is, and that's why it holds up." I think the production on this does sound kind of late 80s hard rock, and, you know, he's definitely correct about it being of its time, but I think he's right. I think more than half of the songs on this album are really, really tremendously scripted songs that would hold up today. Like if a band came up with some of these songs today, they're not going to sound like this, but the song structure, the melodies, the lyrics, it's all still going to work, and I think really well.
I would agree. I think there's a lot of era music that you can pop in and go, ooh, yeah,
right.
I'm just not feeling that. But it's very difficult for me not to pop this on and start, just feeling it, just remembering exactly what it was like to be an idiot 19-year-old with a real lead foot and a car with a penchant for turning into flame.
You were on top of the world, my friend.
On top of the world.
All right, so Colby, People magazine back in 1989.
Let's hear it.
Said this: "Brace yourself. It's time for another dose of rip-snorting elemental rock. The Cult may be a trio, but it's not a small change. I guess they lost a member. I guess they were a four-piece at some point. It's no quarter asked, no quarter given, from the opening rager, Sun King, to the closing squall of Wake Up, Time for Freedom. The only respite is Edie, Chow Baby, a memorial to tragic Andy Warhol protege Edie Sedgwick. For this one number, the Cult puts aside its sledgehammers and picks up instead some hefty ball peens. In other words, it's a sensitive song, and it also happens to be the weakest track on the album.
Oh.
There's no mollycoddling after that. Ian Astbury has a slurry voice, very limited in range. But who cares? He sings it like he means it. Just listen to American Horse, and you'll see that guitarist Billy Duffy has improved the quality of his solos astronomically since the group's last release. It's clear on Automatic Blues and other songs that this is one band that has spent time profitably listening to old Led Zeppelin albums. Yeah, the Cult only knows one mood. Want to make something of it? With all that wimp rock floating around today, Sonic Temple was a bracing tonic.
I can't believe it called Edie the weakest track.
I know, it's insane.
I guess in terms of if you're going on a scale from Full Throttle Rock to weak, then
Yeah, that's true.
I guess that's something that you can consider. But I mean, it's whatever.
What's a ball peen hammer? Are those hammers that are like kind of small that have like a rounded head?
Instead of so your typical the hammer that most people think of is what they call a claw foot. So there's a claw on one end that you use to pull nails out of the wall.
Right.
And a ball peen hammer still has a striking face like a claw foot, but on the reverse side of it, it's got a rounded head. So there's a flat side and then a rounded head side. That's what a ball peen hammer is.
Hey, well, thanks for listening to Colby and Brian Around the House, folks.
Tool time.
Yeah. Hope you enjoyed our discussion of ball peen hammers. Now, my final review, Colby, is from a website called Pop Dose. And they said this. This is just an excerpt from it. The big problem with Sonic Temple is that it runs out of steam halfway. Side 1 has all the hot hits with Sun King, Firewoman, and quite possibly the best thing the band ever did, the tribute to Edie Sedgwick, Edie Chow Baby.
Well, there's a difference of opinion.
Yeah, interesting. While Side 2 has the primo ass-kicker Soul Asylum. That's the first song on Side 2, though, and the rest of the album never gets back up to speed.
Well, listen to that.
And, you know, to a certain extent, I agree with that. I do think Side 2 kind of peters out rather than finishes strongly. However, Colby, the first song I want to talk about today is the next song right after the Soul Asylum, the point where they say the album starts to kind of lose it.
Right.
This is one of my favorite songs on the record, and it is called New York City. All right, so that was New York City. It's actually my third favorite track on the album, but I didn't go with my top two because I actually wanted to talk about this song because I seem to recall that you are not a fan of this track.
I definitely was not a fan, particularly when we were listening to the album all the time. I don't know. I felt it. I don't know exactly how I can encapsulate the way I felt about it, but ultimately it just felt a little much. And when I say much, I don't know how better to explain it, but when you compare it to some of the Side 1 stuff, they were explosive in what I felt was a more innovative way. And I felt that New York City was more of a, I don't know, it was just, there was something tributesque about it. There was something like a little old school feeling about it to me.
Right.
It didn't feel as... felt like ground I've heard before.
Okay.
That's a mixing of metaphor, but you know what I'm trying to go for. You know, like well-covered stuff didn't really feel new and unique to me. And that's why I just didn't really care for it much. Now, if I listen to it, it doesn't really feel that much different to me. Uh-huh. It still feels very much like the type of music they were exploring from the beginning of the album. And I don't hate it.
Okay.
I mean, like I said, certainly back then in 1989... was not a fan.
Yeah.
But
I remember you questioning why I played that particular song on my radio show every now and again in college, and I remember you saying, like, of all the songs, why would you play that one?
I still agree with that sentiment. I mean, I don't have a problem with you liking that song. I do have a problem with if you're going to promote the album with one song, that would not be the one to do it with.
Fair enough. So like I said, this is probably my third favorite song. I do like the song Soul Asylum probably better than this one. That would be my number 2 track, really. But, this one, I want to talk about a song that's not a single. I want to talk about a song that isn't widescreen in scope. I think the 2 songs that you picked especially, and my next song, I think are very widescreen, big budget tunes that sound like a lot of money and a lot of time has been spent on them. This is kind of quick and dirty. You said it's kind of a tribute to something that may have come earlier. I didn't know this at the time because I didn't know much of musical history, but, Iggy Pop is on this song. Now I listen to it and I hear kind of a blues-influenced and punk-influenced song that, they specifically asked Iggy Pop to be on this track because of who Iggy was, playing with the Stooges and stuff. It's aggressive and it's fast.
Right.
It's not super melodic. So that's, it's a fitting place for Iggy to be at. Although at this point in time, Iggy Pop was no longer that dude. I mean, Iggy Pop had done that cover of Wild Child that David Bowie produced, and it was super synthesized.
Right.
So he had already moved on to try to have his Let's Dance album with Bowie. So the song's lyrics here, these stem from their time in New York City when they were working on the album Electric. And Ian Astbury, the singer and lyricist, said, "New York City really has to be experienced. It's like trying to explain the taste of gasoline and vodka. You just kind of have to take a taste yourself. New York City, of course, is famous for its 24-hour nonstop activities. And, of course, its high crime rate, high buildings, intense living, and that's something we experienced for quite a while recording Electric." I think he picked up a lot of this record, what he's going to write about and what interested him on this record in that period of time where they were in New York recording Electric. My next song is also inspired by his time in New York. Lyrically, this is maybe my favorite track on the record. That may be part of why I like it so much. Like that first verse, "I saw a rainbow stretched across the ocean, crashed the Big Apple. So I took a bite, found a taste I like, but she bit me back." I really think that's a cool sentiment and a cool way to phrase it. That idea of him taking a bite out of the Big Apple. Right. But it's, taking a toll on him.
So I know this isn't necessarily the part where we're talking about life experiences, but
sure, whatever.
Since I hadn't really delved into your choices, I'm just remembering. I just think it's interesting that the summer that I got this album was also my first trip to Manhattan.
Oh, really?
And that was with the House Dicks. They were doing some dive bar, and their lead singer that they had at the time was outgoing. They knew he was leaving. He didn't necessarily know I was replacing him, but I came along to sort of help them set up and stuff like that, and just to basically listen to them play. I experienced late 80s Manhattan. And from a kid from central Pennsylvania, it was a massive gear change.
Oh, I believe that.
I had a homeless prophet tell me that he didn't see a future for me.
Oh, really?
It was a little scary.
Oh, man.
I walked into a Hells Angels block party where I was welcomed with open arms. On the Lower East Side of Manhattan. I didn't really know much. I mean, I knew that Hells Angels was a biker group, but I didn't really know much about them. And they were like, "Hey, what are you guys doing?" And we're like, "Oh, we're this band down right around the corner." And they were like, "Oh, well, you guys want a beer?" I was 19 years old. I was like, "Yeah." And then this homeless guy walked in the block party after us, and they beat the living out of him right in front.
Oh, my God.
So I
Welcome
realized
to New York.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of interesting because I talked to my wife, who's much younger than me, who's only been in Manhattan in the current version of it.
Okay.
And she doesn't know anything about old Manhattan. In terms of when I say old Manhattan, I'm talking about when Times Square was almost a DMZ itself.
Right.
It was scary. People would tell you to put your money in your shoes and have a $20 bill in your pocket so that if you got mugged, you could give them that, but keep the rest of your money in your shoes and all this kind of stuff. All kinds of crazy stuff was being told about how to survive New York. It was a tough city. And there were certain pockets that you could go to where you would sort of get respite from it, like the Village. But there were a lot of places that people go to now without a care in the world. But back then, there was an edge and a grit to it. So the whole concept of New York biting him back is something I totally understand.
That's pretty cool. I didn't know you partied with the Hells Angels. I wonder how I'd never heard that story.
I don't know. But they kicked off. They got to the end of the party by putting M80s underneath traffic cones and seeing how high they could make them blow. Not kidding.
There's some other good lyrics. This lyric that I wrote down kind of applies to what you were just talking about. I'm just going to bring it up. The Times Square shuffle, Manhattan blitz, 24-hour groove, working up a frenzy, baby, people push on through. I love that verse. The way those words flow one after another just sounds really good, and it's very fun and easy to sing. I really like that. And speaking of the lyrics, you just said the words. I seriously think, even though I was 18 years old at the time, I think this was the first time I ever heard the acronym DMZ. I think I didn't know what a DMZ was when I heard the song, and I had to look it up. I didn't look it up online. I'm not sure where I looked it up. Where did you find things out?
I think you had to go to encyclopedias back then.
Encyclopedia?
Yeah.
Huh.
Multiple volumes.
That's crazy.
With the same color binding.
Oh, man. Ugh, it just gave me a shudder.
I guess if you're under the age of 30 and you're listening to this for some reason, look it up. Encyclopedias. They were a thing.
And also, while you're looking that up, since you're almost there anyway, look up Encyclopedia Brown. I remember him being really cool, too. So we mentioned Iggy Pop being on this song. Do I care that Iggy Pop is on this track, Colby? I do not care that Iggy Pop is on this song. Iggy Pop has never been important to me. For my lifetime, or at least my lifetime being aware of music, Iggy Pop has been like this sort of pathetic figure who needed David Bowie to take care of him. Like, Bowie would cover his songs, so he would make some money from the sales of Bowie's records, and then Bowie would every now and again feel obligated to produce a record for him because he didn't know what he was doing by himself. At some point in time, he was a really important punk performer.
Yeah.
But he never was when I was aware of him. And I just bought the new Pretenders DVD, and she brings out Iggy Pop on stage to sing with him, and she introduces him by saying, "Here is the best human being on the planet."
Yeah.
And then Iggy Pop comes out.
Do you know how many musicians trace a major amount of their inspiration back to Iggy Pop? He had a stage presence that so many people wanted to recapture. Obviously, you've got a rather low opinion of his music in general, but the Stooges were a major part.
Yep, I know. So many people that I love him.
Right.
Blondie, the Pretenders.
Yeah.
Everybody talks about him back in the day.
Yeah, because apparently seeing Iggy Pop on stage back in those early days was transformative for a lot of musicians. They were like, oh, there's a new way of doing things.
Right.
They tried to take a piece of that and make it their own, and a lot of that basically transformed rock performance as we know it. And Iggy Pop was at the start of it.
Crazy.
So you can crap on him all you want, but the guy was important.
Well, I wouldn't deny that, but let me say I would rather listen to Bowie, and then I would rather listen to Lou Reed, and then I would pick him last out of that core trio right there of people that changed rock.
Fair enough.
I definitely don't think he's the best human being on the planet.
Well, you didn't know him.
That's true. Yeah, I guess he could be.
So, Iggy, if you're listening, call Brian up and explain to him exactly why you're the best person on the planet.
Oh, yeah, Iggy, do that. And in the show notes of this episode, there's a link. You can leave us voicemails online. You won't even have to pay for the call because I'm sure you don't have that much money because Bowie's not around to write music for you anymore.
Now I hope he swears at you.
You can leave this voicemail for free over the internet. Go to a Starbucks or a Panera Bread and you can use the internet for free. You won't even have to pay to get it at your house.
I hate you a little bit right now.
So let me just close this song. I really like the energy of this song. I like how fast, how aggressive it is. I like the lyrics a lot. And I like that it kind of breaks up side two with its almost punk attitude and the thrashing sound of the music. It kind of is a nice little change of pace right in the middle as we go into the last four songs, which I think is where the law of diminishing returns kicks in with the album. After this song, I like the next two songs. I'm not sure how many times I've heard the penultimate song, probably only a handful, and I have no clue what the last song of this album sounds like. I looked at the name of it the other day. I said, I have no idea how this song goes. I don't think I've ever listened to the last song.
I'm sure that's not true. I am just...
Medicine Train.
Wow.
I don't think I've ever made it past Wake Up Time for Freedom.
Yeah, I can understand because Wake Up Time for Freedom for some reason puts me to sleep as well.
Mm-hmm. The majority of this album is really strong and is really good. We'll give some final evaluations at the end. We'll give it our score and stuff. It's just sort of near the end there. I lose interest. But this is a great track on side two, in my opinion. So, Colby, what's your first song that you want to talk about?
I'm going to start off my pick with the start of the album because where else would you possibly begin with other than a song that says this is where it all ends? I think that's the best part. One of the most hilarious things about this album I don't know if it was intentional or not, to kick off with this wash of guitar.
Yep.
And then the vocals come in. And this is where it all ends. And you're like, wait, what? I just put the needle in.
I hope I didn't pay $10 for 52 seconds of music.
But no, I mean, this is rightfully, it's a powerhouse rock song. It starts off very impressively. I mean, there is nothing but it feels like the rock version of Fireworks immediately. And like, this song is always going to be one of those songs where I can start it off and I can listen to it and I immediately feel energized, just ready to go.
It's like an energy drink.
It is. It's a Red Bull in a rock song.
It sure is. I agree. I agree. This is a fantastic opener. This is the only song on the album I think that could have been the opener, except for Firewoman. Firewoman could have opened the album.
True.
But I like that it didn't. Like those two songs, Sun King and Firewoman, I can't picture them being separated. In my mind, they sort of have to be right next to each other, one way or the other. You know, I didn't know until this weekend that this was actually a single released from the album. Did you know that?
I wasn't listening to it on the radio. I mean, I wouldn't say that I necessarily knew that, but...
So yeah, here in the U.S., it didn't quite get to number 1. It got to number 21 on the modern rock chart, and it got to number 18 on the mainstream rock chart. And that's still pretty good. In the U.K., it peaked at number 39. But, you know, I was listening to it, and I was thinking, yeah, this was a single. And then I said, you know, they just kind of played around with their guitar and just fiddled with things for like 54 seconds before the drums kick in and the song started. I was like, this can't possibly be the version of the song that was released. So I dug out a Canadian compilation that I have called Pure Cult. I said, I'll listen to the version of Sun King that's on there. And it's the album version. It seriously takes like 54 seconds to get going.
Oh, that's right.
So then I was like, I still can't believe that. I can't believe it. Many, many years later, there's an album that came out in America called Pure Cult, but it's a different record, has a different cover and different set list or track list. The version that's on there actually is like a single edit, that noodling around in the beginning. It only goes on for like 25 seconds.
Yeah, see, you know, I said it exploded with fireworks, but you're right. Like there is this little minute of buildup.
Yep, you get some cymbal crashes.
That's right. But there's something great about that. There's something phenomenal about the anticipation that it builds. I didn't realize it was a minute long.
It almost is. It's like 54, 55 seconds.
I definitely know that when it actually does hammer home that riff, you're like, oh yeah.
You're ready for it. Yeah. It's like when you go to a show and the orchestra's tuning up.
Right.
And then when the song starts, that catharsis that you have, that's what that is. It's like a full minute of building you up and getting ready for that riff and the drums to kick in.
Yep.
That song is great.
When we were starting to talk about this, we were talking about, you know, manly music. And there's something way alpha male about this song. When you listen to the lyrics, it's a guy telling a woman, I'm gonna do this because I'm the man, basically. I'm going to show you whatever because I rule. You know, like, you're going to enjoy yourself because I'm the Sun King.
Now, Ian talks about that. He says about this song, it was inspired by Louis XIV. I mean, they were a pretty decadent lot. They used to crap on the floor in Versailles, I think. But he says the song is just basically a very masculine statement. Reading the lyrics, I didn't get that out of it because I read those lyrics and you have like this narrator he says, I'm on my knees, mama, please. He's like on his knees begging this woman, and he's offering to share his throne just to have her. Like he's in a position of power, but, you know, I'll share it with you if you just come hang out with me. I read these and I see someone who is not really all that masculine, but I mean, you and Ian are both telling me that
You know, it's funny, you know, I'm looking at the lyrics right now and I see the on my knees, mama, please, and I remember it, but I focused in on more things like the opening line, the hot damn, ooh, mercy, man, what are you trying to do to me? Uh-huh. What are you trying to prove, girl? Like, I always got the impression that he was in control. And now you're pointing out lyrics that seem to indicate begging, and I never even considered them.
Oh, really?
I never really did. Yeah, you're right. He says that he's on his knees. He says that he'll share his throne, and he can't make it on his own.
Yeah.
I totally ignored all of those things.
I guess Ian did too. He forgets he wrote those lines. But I'm not going to dispute what you said because Ian is agreeing with you. The song's just basically a very masculine statement, he says. And he said more to that effect that I cut out of the quote that I put here on my paper. You know, that's just what I got out of it, though.
How about that? I always got this, the song is in your face, the dude is in your face. That's the image that I always had. But, you know, careful, critical listening can really make a difference.
Well, it's also kind of hard because this is one on cassette and CD, the two versions that we've had. I guess now we stream it or whatever, but we never had the lyrics in either of those formats, so we couldn't follow along. We just, if you're listening to it in your car all the time, you sort of had to kind of pay attention to what you were doing with your driving. So
somewhat.
You couldn't give the lyrics 100% of your attention.
Not 100%. Maybe 95.
Nightflight.com, which, I often talk on here about how I used to watch music videos late Friday nights on the USA Network on Night Flight, a show called Night Flight that was on for like hours at a time. But now they've recently come back as like an online entity, and I followed them on Facebook. They said something about, at this time period of the cult's history, Asbury began giving interviews espousing his view that civilization had raped and fenced off Mother Earth and had toppled the mystical order of the world as it was meant to exist. And he would tell journalists that he himself was actually a sun king. What do you think about that, Colby?
It's impressive. That's what I will say about that. All I will say is that it is impossible for me to not... If I think of Sonic Temple, I can't not think of Sun King. Like, to me, it is synonymous with the album. When I first got home with that cassette, and I ripped the little plastic off and had to keep ripping all the little extra pieces.
Yep.
I finally cracked it open, got that burst of printer smell.
Yep.
And popped it in, hit play. I remember being so overwhelmed with the discovery of this music that I will never forget that moment. I'll never forget that sort of impact that it had on me. And that if you go back to talking about New York City and how you played it on your radio show at Shippensburg, and I was disgusted with you because I was like, how could you not have played Sun King? How could you not have played the song that just shows you exactly how much in your face these guys are going to get? And instead you went with a rock song. That is why my first pick is the first song.
Nice. I like it. Two things. You picked the first two tracks on this album. You actually have listened to more than the first two tracks, right? You didn't pick the first two songs just because that's all you've ever heard?
I have listened to this entire album.
Okay, good. And the fact that you were able to listen to it, that stemmed probably from the fact that on that day that you were just talking about when you bought the cassette, you didn't leave it in an arcade somewhere for someone to just steal?
For anybody just tuning in, trying to figure out what he might be babbling about, yes, there was a Tesla album I bought. And while we were playing games in a coin-operated arcade, I left the bag with said cassette next to the arcade game that I was playing and forgot about it.
Well, if it was a Skid... Who was it?
Tesla.
You're probably better off. I saw Tesla in concert last year. Well, actually, I was at a venue where Tesla opened for a band.
Okay.
But I didn't see them. I actually went out and stood in line for a soda, and I missed the entire show. It sounded rough, though.
Yeah, but you got to love them a little bit.
Why?
Because David Bowie played Tesla in a movie once.
Oh, that's true. He did. The Prestige. Yeah. I forgot about that. I do love Bowie, and as a result, I'm going to go on a record and say that I love the band Tesla. That's a great connection right there.
Yeah, I'm quick like that.
All right, so we're up to our third track. This is my second and final pick. This is a song. It's my number two. No, wait. I just claimed that Soul Asylum was my number two track on the album. I'm all confused now what my favorite song is. This isn't my favorite song on the album. This is my number two favorite song. Soul Asylum is number 3. New York is number 4. I couldn't take my number 1 pick because you had already claimed it. So I went with my number 2 pick. This is a great song. It's, the tender side of the cult, their heart-touching attempt to hit the radio with a nice little ballad. Not as shameless as a lot of other rock bands at the time. But this is a track that I love the sound. This is Edie.
Boy said you were a youth waker, Edie, a stormy little world shaker. Oh, darling queen, an angel with a broken wing. The dogs lay at your feet, oh, we caressed your cheek.
Ian said, Edie was inspired when I was in New York City when we were recording Electric. I have several friends there involved in the fashion industry, and one in particular turned me on to a movie called Chow Manhattan. I became extremely interested in the Velvet Underground and the Warhol period. I liked reading that because this song had the same effect on me, which is why I chose it. listening to this song and having it be one of my favorite songs on the album, after a while, I just wanted to know who this Edie person was. And researching her got me into Warhol's Factory, and I read all these books about, that group of artists, including Gene Stein's biography of Edie Sedgwick. And I went to like this VHS rental store outside of Baltimore that was like one of the last video places where you could rent VHS tapes. But they had like this amazing collection, and I got that movie Chow Manhattan that Ian was talking about, and I got Andy Warhol's Dracula and these collections of New York underground films with like Lydia Lunch and Richard Hell and all the stuff that now when I think about it, it's so ponderous and like pretentious and almost unwatchable, but at the time I thought it was like amazing. I was like, oh my God, I'm so sheltered. This is what the world is like. And I went to Pittsburgh to visit the Warhol Museum, which is actually really cool. I would do that again today because it was a neat experience, but I don't need to watch all those movies again. And in fact, I even wrote a song myself about Edie because I seriously think I was infatuated with this woman who had been dead for like a long time. Or else I was doing that thing where like men think that they can save these unfortunate women because we're so awesome. Yeah, I don't think anybody could have saved Edie. Learning about that also got me into the Velvet Underground and Lou Reed. And I was into them I still like them, but I was really into them for a good number of years. So I do love this song quite a bit, but the effect that it had on my interest in my life is a big part of why I selected this song. It's one of the rare songs that Ian has written the lyrics for that is like dedicated to somebody real, dedicated to the factory and the people at the factory. Although he would kind of go on years later, they would once again get together with Bob Rock for an album called Beyond Good and Evil. And I think it was really an attempt to recreate the magic of Sonic Temple.
Right.
And there's even a song on that album. It may even be track 4. I can't really remember, but it's called Nico. Right. Which is a very similar sounding song. Do you remember that single?
I do remember listening to that album and thinking, oh, well, they're really trying to, it's sort of like The Hangover 3.
Yeah, it's a pretty good album. They didn't capture the zeitgeist twice.
Right.
So this song in the UK got to 32. In the US, it peaked at 93. It's not very good.
Nope.
Every hard rock band, when they released a ballad, is supposed to automatically make the top 40. I don't get it.
Well, it's all about subject matter. If you look back in those late 80s, early 90s time frames and the rock bands that would release a ballad, you had to pretty much have a high tenor scream
yep.
in order to send it home. And, Ian didn't really do that with this. It was a lot of sort of careful. Everything else about this album, I think, is kind of a headlong rush into whatever they're trying to get across. They're just like, bam, here it is. And I think Edie is the most careful, thoughtful song on the album. And the music feels very, very careful and very soulful. And that's not something that exists anywhere else on the album. And I don't think that in the late 80s, it had that much of a place, particularly when you think about mainstream music. It was definitely a very unique song. There's elements of it that I think influenced other things later. I think that even though it was obviously lifted from the Rolling Stones, Bittersweet Symphony always made me think of this.
Oh, really?
Yeah. The actual sound of that song was lifted from a Rolling Stones song. I don't know if you ever heard that. But
I must have, because I have their greatest hits, but I can't think of like what song it is.
Yeah, that particular song, it was in the one 90s kid movie. It was based on Dangerous Liaisons. Reese Witherspoon and Ryan Philippe and whatever. Anyway, at the very end of it, they came out to this song, and when I heard it, the first thing I thought of was the Cult's Edie.
Oh, all right.
Just because of the symphonic feel.
Uh-huh.
Because of the way the rest of this album is, it feels so jarring, and then when you're listening to the way the lyrics are, it's so different. I always liked it as sort of a breath in the middle of the album, you know?
Right.
It's just like this very, very nice, very clear change of pace from the rest of the direction of the album to me. It was never one of my first picks. I never really wanted to, I just want to listen to that song. Mm-hmm. But when I was listening to the album through, I'd always be like, this is cool.
You wouldn't skip it.
No.
What year roughly do you remember groups like Winger and Extreme and the Damn Yankees, like these hard rock bands that would hit the top 40 with one ballad that like wasn't really typical of their sound? That was early 90s, right?
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, I would think that, Winger was in that time frame. Winger would have been 88, 89.
Miles Away, I think, was the song that I remember by them.
Oh, she's only 17.
Oh, that's not a ballad though, right?
No.
That's like a harder rock.
Yeah. You're specifically talking about ballads?
Yeah.
There was Firehouse. That would have been 91.
Oh, yeah.
I think that was 91.
Love of a Lifetime.
Yeah. A lot of bands with that feel. Yeah.
So like all those songs did really well.
Right.
But all those songs are like mellow the whole way through. Pretty much. This song It may not like rock in the middle, but,
Right.
but we get some hard rock sounding guitars. And, it's just we have the symphony or the orchestra in there playing with them.
Right.
I keep saying this is their tender ballad or whatever. It's not all that tender.
No.
It's no more than words. It has a little more musculature to it than that.
Yeah, if they did an acapella version, it wouldn't hold water.
Yeah. I like you said it's actually soulful. I like that adjective to describe the song because obviously, it's a hard rock album. You hear, like I said, New York City had some punk influences on some of these songs. I mean, it's even in the title of some of the songs. You get like a blues influence.
Yep.
But this is probably the only song on here that I can think of that does have any soul to it.
Right.
So I kind of like that you pointed that out. And I mentioned, of course, that there is, I don't know if you call it an orchestra, but there's a small group of cello players and some other people on here. Billy Duffy said on recording the song, it was crazy. Bob Rock got really into it. He was like, right, we're going to do this, and we're going to hire 8 cellists. And we actually laid the basic rhythm and the backing track with the cello players live. We used 2 studios in Vancouver. It was great. And just to do it analog and really old-fashioned, it brought a great deal of excitement to it. It was very intense trying to get it as they were just regular orchestral cello players. They showed up, they got a bit of sheet music, bashed it out, just waiting for the rock stars to come in and make mistakes. So I love like this guy who worked on Enter Sandman and who actually, for a brief amount of time I read, was like the bass player of Metallica. He, on one of their albums, Saint Anger, is that one of their albums? He wrote and played all the bass parts on that album for him. Like he got super excited to have cello players in the studio with him.
Yep.
Ooh, the cello players are coming in today. As much as I love this song, I have to say, lyrically, it's not one of the better songs on the album. I mean, I like the subject matter. I like that they address Warhol in the factory. Like I said, I was infatuated with Edie. But the lyrics actually are kind of repetitive, not all that strong. But I do like that they use the word youth quaker, which of course harkens back to Dead or Alive's hit album, Youthquake. My man, Pete Burns.
Yeah, that's where they got it, I'm sure.
Did you watch the video for this?
I did not.
Well, much like all cult videos of this era,
Boring.
it's boring. It just is them performing, and there's the cello players. And then it cuts to some scenes with a very attractive model who, has her hair made up sort of like Edie Sedgwick. But the best part of the video is right in the beginning. I wish you watched it. Right at the beginning as we get like an establishing shot of New York to show like where this is happening.
Right.
Remember the time period that this was filmed, probably early summer, late spring, 1989, New York City. There was a gigantic billboard of the Batman 89 Batman logo. Remember like how the logo for that movie was just the bat symbol?
That's it.
And people would some people were like, I don't even know what that symbol is. I thought it was the Joker's grin. I couldn't tell it was bat. But it's that bat on a huge billboard. It's like bigger than anything else in the city.
That's awesome.
Yeah, the high point of the video. So that's my second out of 2 songs. I really like that one. It breaks, like you said, it sort of breaks up side 1 with its musical beauty. I think it is a pretty beautiful song. The cellos and the nice fingerstyle guitar work at the beginning and the end. The production maybe is a little muddled. When you listen to the musical interlude in the center of that song, I forgot to write this down and I wanted to say it. I think that this is the song in the album where it gets the most muddled. I feel like there are sounds that in the mix that we're presented with, you can't even make them out. Like when the guitar solo is going, I can hear the drums in the guitar solo, at least on the boombox I was listening to this on Monday. I couldn't even hear the bass. So I think, that is something I was reading that was typical of this time period with hard rock, sort of like a real thick, heavy, muddled mix was kind of something they tried to get.
Right.
And I don't think it sounds bad. It's just, if you have that many instrumentalists playing on this track, you should maybe try to let us hear them all. I don't know. I didn't really notice that till recently, so it's not a big problem.
Well, you should probably call up Bob and state your complaint.
Well, maybe I will, but right now I'm really gunning for Iggy Pop. I want to focus my attention on making sure he knows that I'm not impressed.
Fair enough.
All right, so that brings us up to our last song of the show. And Colby, this is yours, of course. So what song did you choose to go out on?
Well, because, you already mentioned that you worried that I only listened to the first two songs of the album. We're talking about the second track, and we're talking about Firewoman. I think earlier you mentioned that you can't think of Sun King without thinking of Firewoman. Like, they very nicely dovetail with each other.
It's like Never Gonna Give You Up and Together Forever by Rick Astley.
I really don't like you very much right now. There's something about this song that I think is kind of a cool... If Sun King is I'm a man in your face, Firewoman is sort of a worship song. Like, the mystical, wonderful woman in all of her greatness is being revered in Firewoman.
Yeah.
That's always been my take on it. And like the sort of anthemic way he sings the chorus is just sort of the bow and nod to all things woman that we appreciate.
You're absolutely right. I had a little quote from Ian on this song. He said, very similar to She Sells Sanctuary, in a sense referring to the power of the matriarch. It's a song of sexual power and spirited expression.
See, I like it when Ian continues to agree with me.
And this time I think you're both right.
Well, it's good to know that occasionally the broken clock is right.
So you alluded earlier in the show that this song did really well in New Zealand, hitting number 1 and finishing number 13 in New Zealand for the whole entire year.
Oh, Firewoman is every bit of the sort of bombastic, beautiful rock that the cult ever attains. Like, this to me is... Like Sun King, we mentioned before that it's got that build up. And then when it comes on, you're like, yeah. And Firewoman is just a rolling, driving, in-your-face song from the beginning. Mm-hmm. And it's just one of those songs that makes you push a little harder on the gas pedal. Did
you ever get a ticket while listening to this song? A speeding ticket?
I don't think it's possible. It's hard for me to remember exactly. I remember getting a speeding ticket on 114 once. Definitely never got a speeding ticket driving between Shippensburg and Messiah, where I listened to this the most.
Okay, well, that's good.
Man, there's so many things that I think that are awesome about this song. One of the things that I think is awesome about this song is also sort of comical. Uh-huh. There is something about Ian Astbury's vocals that are really prevalent in this song. There's this sort of accidental vocalization he does. Mm-hmm. I can't mimic it because I don't have anywhere near the vocal quality he does, but it's basically the like in between stuff where he's just trying to sort of make a burst of sound, but it almost sounds like he's surprised by something. And like he does it a lot in different songs, but in this song it really is in the forefront. And like every time I listen to this song, there's something about it that sounds like something unexpectedly furry ran across his foot or something.
I thought it was interesting. There was a cool quote I found by him. He said it was their first real attempt at trying to create something for the commercial market, but not consciously, if that makes sense. I was like, no, not really. But he says we were definitely in a career at this point, and that's when I felt that things they didn't really fit for me. It's interesting because people can still identify really strongly with that period and image, and they expect to see it when they come out to see us. But then they see a guy in his late 40s and he has a big beard and he's a little burly. And they go, whoa, what happened to that skinny 26-year-old kid in the cowboy hat? But I mean, you can see that would happen because, I mean, this song, number 15 in the UK, number 2 US alternative, number 4 US mainstream, almost hit the top 40 pop charts, got to number 46. I mean, this was like their biggest song. The video, while being kind of boring in my opinion, is kind of iconic, I think.
Right.
There's a lot of imagery in that video that I think people remember.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I mentioned this earlier today, and we were just talking about coming in and recording this, but like Billy Duffy looks like Fabio learned how to play the guitar.
Yeah, he does.
I mean, his big, long, flowing locks, and like he does. He looks like a romance novel cover. It's just he's also playing guitar. And like they definitely have, all of them are getting caught by some well-placed fans so that their hair majestically
Right,
blows in
yep.
the wind. And to me, it's the song I hear when I look at the album cover.
It's the song I hear when I think of the Cult.
Right. I think there's been any number of, I can't say off the top of my head, I can't come up with examples, but to me, if I hear the Cult in something, if a television show uses a little snippet of the Cult, this is what it would be, you know? They definitely were their most memorable, I think, with this. I'm not saying that their other songs weren't strong. There's plenty of really great Cult songs, in my opinion. But this just stays with you.
Oh, yeah. I saw a review by John Bush on allmusic.com, which is a pretty good site I like to go to. Sometimes it's, it's all contemporary reviews looking back. I tried really hard to find a review of this song from the time period just to see what people thought about it back then, and I couldn't. But John said, heavy riffing surprise of a hit, Firewoman made the Cult a group of one-time gothic punksters during the early 80s into metal stalwarts across middle America barely 5 years later. The group's twin leaders, vocalist Ian Astbury and guitarist Billy Duffy, remind me to say something about that, please, struck a perfect balance on the track between electrified crossroads blues and the heat-stroke mirage of the American desert at high noon. Producer Bob Rock commercialized the Cult's style only slightly, and Firewoman became a hit all over hard rock radio. It also staked the Cult's claim as the only band, barring possibly Jane's Addiction, equally loved by metalheads and alternative music fans.
Wow.
And I thought that was a pretty good point, too, because I can't think of another band. I wouldn't have thought of Jane's Addiction by myself just because I'm too painfully ignorant of the 90s, but having it brought up, that makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah.
I can't think of another band that was embraced by both groups of fans.
I love both bands, so yeah, I didn't ever think of the comparison myself either, but yeah.
It is a good one. And I also wanted to just say, him saying that the group has twin leaders, Ian Astbury and guitarist Billy Duffy. In most bands, you just think of the lead singer as the leader. I don't know, in Depeche Mode,
Yeah, you got the
Martin
Fletch.
Gore, the Fletch. Martin Gore writes the song, so you give him some, you elevate him a little bit. But I still think of Dave as the leader of the band. But in the Cult, I actually sort of have always, when having this brought up, I have always thought of them sort of on equal levels.
Yeah.
Billy and Ian. Like if they would go their separate ways, I don't think either of them would try to keep using the name
No.
of the Cult. I think they know it has to be the two of them.
Yep. I think that they were pretty much in lockstep for the majority of their career in terms of the sound that they wanted to go for was always a collaboration as opposed to one of them forcing their will on the other one.
Right.
Can you think of any other groups that had a definite twin leadership presence?
Let's see.
'Cause I'm going to bring up one that is totally not in your fans' wheelhouse.
Okay. The Proclaimers.
It's basically one person that just happened to be cloned
Yep.
in the womb. Kiss.
Oh, really? See, I don't know anything about Kiss.
Well, you wouldn't, because, why would you? It's not something that you would listen to. But Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley were always, the sort of twin towers of Kiss, even though some might say that Ace Frehley was like one of the most talented guitarists and definitely made Kiss what they were.
Uh-huh.
They got rid of him at one point because he was drug dependent and hard to deal with and stuff like that. They just, boom, booted him and brought in these session guys, basically, and added them to the band. And they even attempted, the whole makeup thing. They even attempted unique makeup for the new guys. Nobody liked it. So they just said, no, you can wear their old makeup.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Who's the vocalist in Kiss?
Well, Paul, Stanley, all of them, put it to you this way. I recently had, it's so ridiculous to go off on a tangent about Kiss on the Permanent Record podcast, I know. But I recently had a Kiss flashback. That Kiss was one of the first rock albums I ever owned when I was like 9 years old or 8 years old.
Oh, yeah.
Didn't
Didn't you put something on Facebook about it?
I did. So it was a song called Charisma, and it just happened to be one of the songs. Most of the time, Paul was the lead vocalist, but Gene Simmons happens to be the lead vocalist for this one. It very much reminded me that I tend to gravitate towards the person that represents sort of the bad guy streak. Mm-hmm. So Gene Simmons was obviously the guy that was spitting blood and fire and throwing his tongue out while he was playing bass on his big dragon boots. He was the vocalist for this particular song that was all about, well, the song's title is Charisma.
Uh-huh.
But, later in life, JY from Styx
JY,
would be
yeah.
my favorite. And he was, the one playing Miss America and all the sort of harder tracks. And
Right.
I find it interesting that was
That's where you gravitated?
Gene Simmons started it all for me.
That's crazy. And I only ever see him in the news or him being interviewed, so I've always assumed that he was the lead singer.
No. So Paul Stanley has a slightly higher voice. In his prime, Gene Simmons had a good range as a baritone. You can hear it in that song Charisma, but Paul Stanley was the one that did most of the lead vocals.
Okay. Didn't know that.
But those two together were the Twin Towers of Kiss, and everything that they did as a band was those two deciding what was going to happen.
Yeah.
Much like Ian and Billy.
And Billy, you brought it back full circle. All right, so this is this my favorite cult song? It's probably not my favorite cult song, but it's up there. And this song is so good that the 1,000 times that I've heard it in my life has not made me tired of it at all. I could listen to it again right now.
Yeah.
If you wanted to put it on, I'd be like, yeah, let's go listen to it. I saw a great quote about it, and this would be my last offering of information here about Firewoman. I didn't even write down the website. It was just in my Google search. I saw it in one of the little summaries. Somebody said about Firewoman, this is the song that launched 1 million lap dances.
I can see that too.
The cult, ladies and gentlemen, Sonic Temple. So we have talked about our 4 favorite tracks and given you a little bit of history about the album, hopefully you enjoyed it. Let's just sort of here at the end, Colby, we always like to kind of wrap up by just giving the album a rating out of 5 record adapters. Mm-hmm. Record adapters are like stars.
Yeah.
We just say record adapters. If you had to throw out a rating scale 1 to 5, what would you give this album?
I should have been prepared. I should have had a number in my mind because this isn't my first appearance on the Permanent Record Podcast.
And that's true.
So I should have realized that you were going to ask me this question, but I had not. So I'm trying to stall a little bit by rambling before I actually give a number.
Well, let me tell you while you think. Let me tell you what I would give it. I gave it a little bit of thought because I figured I might ask myself this question. So this record, I think you'll agree, side 1 is flawless.
Right. 5
tracks on side 1, and they are all amazing songs. There's no decrease in quality. There's no letdown in energy or songwriting skill. And then you flip the tape, or you don't because you're streaming it, and the first song on side 2, Soul Asylum, comes on, and it's better than almost every song on side 1. It's a tremendous song. Like I said, I love New York City. Not everyone does. And from then, it's sort of, the songs are still good, but it just loses some of the majesty. It loses some of the widescreen sound. It seems like they're rushing through it. The songs, on side 1, they're 5 minutes and 6 minutes long. Here, they're like 4 minutes, and it's more of a traditional kind of hard rock and blues tinge song. So I like almost all those songs, except for the last song, which I don't even know. So with an album as side 1 is that perfect, and a side 2 that is pretty enjoyable, I can't give it a 5.
Right.
But I can't give it like a 3.
Certainly not.
I'm pretty comfortable, I think, giving the album Sonic Temple a 4 record adapters out of 5.
So I don't disagree with anything you said, but I will say this. If I think of songs from 1989, there are very few that I would say, you know what, I could put that on a playlist now and be happy about it. If you think about that longevity element, to me, that is worth another half of a record adapter.
Okay.
And even though I can't in good faith give something a perfect freaking 5 record adapters when there are songs that are forgettable on the album, I think that compilation of songs in the first half of the album, I'm not going to say side 1 because I'm going to include the beginning and the back half.
Okay.
First half of the album are so tremendous and so well done, and so the fact that they're still good, they're still listenable, they're still enjoyable. They're not stuck in that time frame of 1989, in my opinion.
Right.
I still think that they feel like you could turn a 12-year-old onto them now. It might not be, there might not be enough rap for them, but there's still enough on there. There's still enough meat on that bone that I think a new generation could listen to it and appreciate it and possibly be influenced by it.
Are you saying, let me interrupt, are you saying that these songs from 1989 hold up better than other 1989 songs like Bat Dance
Yes.
and Wild Thing by Tone Loc?
Yes.
Oh.
What else you got in that list?
Blame It on the Rain?
Well, you know how much I love that.
Buffalo Stance?
Oh, God, those are some really atrocious songs.
Here's the last one. I know you're going to love this one. Another Day in Paradise?
Who's that?
Phil Collins?
Oh, that's right. Now I remember the song. That was when he was like the soundtrack master, wasn't it?
Yep. Yep. Yeah, these songs do hold up way better than all of those songs I just
Yeah.
saw on that list.
Without doubt. Because of the staying power, I think, of this music, I think it deserves 4.5. Even if the album it's particularly flawed in the last few tracks, I think that ultimately it's so strong based on the strength of the first half of the songs that are on this album that you have to at least give it a 4, but me personally, 4.5.
Hey, that makes sense. I like your logic, and I wouldn't dispute your awarding of that extra point. It deserves it. So, hey, that's a pretty cool album, and it's fun to talk about, some aggressive hard rock, man.
You're going to have to delve into some real easy listening on your next podcast.
Yeah, luckily I was just, if you follow us on Facebook, you saw that we were at that yacht rock concert last month. Maybe I could talk about Ambrosia.
That'll help.
So, yeah, maybe we'll do that next time. We can do whatever we want.
That's right.
In September sans Sarah.
No Sarah, no rules.
Yep. Oh, man, it's never been better than this. Not having Sarah around, it's incredible.
You know what?
What?
You might stay up to 10 on a school night.
I might, but I might be tired the next day if I did, so probably not. So, hey, Room, thanks for making the trip over to sit down with us and talk about this record. I had a lot of fun, and it was especially cool to talk about this with you because I wouldn't even know it if it wasn't for you.
I appreciate the opportunity to talk about it with you on the podcast, and I'm hoping that at least one or two of your listeners might actually dare to give a guitar album a try based on the strength of your recommendation, and maybe we'll get some new cult fans out there.
That'd be cool. Well, folks, if you want to let us know that you like this album, or if you want to let us know that we wasted your time talking about all this guitar stuff, drop us a line at our email address, or, we have that voicemail number set up. You can call us if you're in the U.S. The number is 724-490-8324, or in the show notes, because I can never remember it, there is a link to our SpeakPipe page where you can leave a voicemail for free from anywhere in the world. So we'd love to hear what you think about the cult. Also chime in on Facebook or Twitter where we have the link to this show. So, friends, join me in thanking once again Colby Zell, Master of Ceremonies. He was mentioned last week in our Mission episode twice because he's been in my life since, I don't even know, 1985, I guess. We've done a lot of stuff together.
I met you in 1982.
Oh, yeah, I always confuse when I started high school and when I started middle school. You're right. Jeez, we're old.
We're really old.
So we better get going because it is getting late. Colby, thanks for joining us. And folks, thanks for listening. This is Brian, your second favorite host. This is probably the last time I'm going to get to speak to you without Sarah. So I hope you enjoyed these 2 episodes. When Sarah gets back, she'll let me know what I did wrong in them. We'll talk to you next time.
Yeah.